Welcome to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. Comment is the big conversation, the great debate, but it can only be either of those if you join in. That's why, above all, I need your telephone calls. The number to call is 44208-601-4555. You call us, we'll call you back, establish a clear line. And remember, if you get on the television with me, the volume on your television has to be at 0, or I'll have to press swiftly on, because no one will understand either of us. You can also SMS the show, which will come up here on the comment wall if it's a particularly good SMS. That's 447800008066. Or you can email me, and that too will come up on the comment wall if it's exceptional, at comment@presstv.co.uk. And this being the second decade of the 21st century, you can also tweet me at comment_presstv. Parliament has been recalled tomorrow with astonishing swiftness. The Prime Minister and the House of Commons authorities saw it as vital that Parliament be recalled from its very, very long summer stretching into autumn holiday. You'll recall that I was demanding the recall of Parliament from the very first day until the last day of the assault upon Gaza, which cost thousands of people their lives, most of them women and children, 500 of them children. I didn't even get an answer, never mind a refusal. But Parliament has been recalled so that Britain can go back to war with Iraq. I'm not making that up. You haven't inadvertently switched on to a programme from 11 years ago. The British Parliament is to be invited by the British government with the support of the leaders of the official opposition and indeed the Liberal Democrats to go back to war with Iraq. I'm, of course, going to oppose it. If I'm chosen to speak, I will outline as powerfully as I can the reasons why I believe that, notwithstanding the venality of ISIL, notwithstanding their wickedness, which I have testified to on this programme every Thursday for years, with nobody listening. It's not that I'm in favour of allowing ISIL to go on murdering, massacring, destroying, tearing apart the fabric of Syria and Iraq and anywhere else they could get their hands on. On the contrary, I want total war against ISIL. But I want total war against ISIL by those who are best placed to fight them, those who are already fighting them. I want total war waged by the government of Iraq, total war waged by the government of Syria. And I want those two armies strengthened by everyone in the world. They should lack nothing. They should be given everything. And the obvious people to help the governments of Syria and Iraq are the neighbouring governments, the governments in the region who have the most to lose. And it's not as if those governments are short of firepower. What they call Saudi Arabia has 700 military warplanes. They could bomb anything and everything. They could bomb anywhere. And they could bomb it until they could bomb no more. Turkey is a member of NATO. It is a NATO ally, armed to the teeth. It too could bomb ISIL anywhere, everywhere. Iran is a regional superpower and with a vital interest in defeating ISIL. Why don't those armies get strengthened and invited to join the fight against ISIL? I tell you, if they did, ISIL would be finished in a moment, as soon as you could say Jack Robinson. The reason why Britain and America intend instead, rather than to strengthen the governments that are already fighting ISIL, to fly halfway around the world to launch cruise missiles and to mount armed assaults from sea, land and air upon ISIL is because they want to control the outcome. And they have, as many in the region have said just in the last few days, impure intentions. Their hands are not clean. Their intentions are not pure. Their intentions are venal. And of course, there's the small matter of Britain and America being responsible for the catastrophe in Iraq and being jointly and severally responsible with others for the catastrophe in Syria. And those who helped to destroy Iraq, those who are still today helping to destroy Syria, can hardly be the people to call on to put it right. So my view of the anti-ISIL alliance is this. It is an alliance of the great and the gruesome. And by great, I certainly don't mean good. I mean great as in extremely powerful. Gruesome, you can take your pick as to which of the grisly alliance members of the coalition of the killing that Barack Obama has assembled as to which is the most gruesome. No doubt in the course of the next 60 minutes or so, we'll explore these issues. The first call is already on the line. It's Ben in London. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, I'm good. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, I just really wanted to talk a little bit about the hypocrisy of the West and the real reasons for their intervention in this region, which is, solely due to imperialism, as you and I both know. This is nothing really to do with ISIS and ISIL, which are abhorrent groups, absolutely. But there's clearly a wider goal here. And they wanted to invade Syria last year, and now they have the perfect excuse and the perfect opportunity to do so. And as you've said, why are they not turning to Syria or other countries in the region, or even Iraq and Syria themselves, to deal with this problem? And it's clearly because strategically they want to have boots on the ground, they want to control the outcome, like you say, and they want to control the oil. And we've seen what's happened previously. They've left behind a failed state in Iraq, a failed state in Syria, a failed state in Libya. They've got their war carrier in the region in the form of Israel that they give $3 billion a year to in military aid. And they clearly want to have a controlling interest now in Syria, which they've not been able to get their tentacles into. And that's my position on this, that absolutely I condemn the Islamic State, but it's a very convenient opportunity and in a situation that they found themselves in now, where they can put boots on the ground and control the outcome.
Well, Ben, that's a very succinct summary of exactly where we are, for which I thank you. I would add only this. We were paying for these very groups of Takfiri savage fanatics until this day, and it will not change tomorrow. It's true that we did not directly ourselves fund ISIL, but we did fund the organization from which ISIL has broken or been expelled, an organization called Al-Qaeda. Some viewers with long memories of more than 24 hours may well remember them. We were funding and arming other Takfiri fanatic groups operating in Syria in the conflict there, and we still are. And moreover, under the cover of the bombardment that the United States and its friends are conducting in Syria is a plan to build, training them in Saudi Arabia, an army which, once ISIL has been dealt with, will undoubtedly march toward Damascus to carry out the mission which has taken them a very, very long time to achieve, the mission of destroying the independent Syrian Arab Republic. Thanks, Ben, for that call. Jamal is in Iraq. What's your view of the anti-ISIL alliance, Jamal?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. John Balleri.
You're welcome.
From Iraqi Kurdistan. Anti-ISIL alliance, they are come together to make more pressure on this group, this Takfiri group in the Middle East, because this group is so much risk, so much threat for the people from the area. They done a very, very catastrophic action. They killed a lot of people from Yazidi Kurd, also from the Shia, from the Kobani. Also just now there is fighting is running near to the Kobani, near the border of the Turkey there, and fighting, despite this all of fighting that anti-terrorist action that done by the ISIL, and the civilian war just going on there. So in this situation, we have had some other force to keep this civilian, this terrorist. Some politician told me, may this civilian war kept only by the hand God. Just God can keep this all of fighting, but this all of fighting against each other in the area. So anti-ISIL alliance, that they make this power to control them. This is just not military action. They have also have politician action. Many Arabic countries in the area, they joining this alliance. Arabic Saudi, Jordan also there. Also, Mr. Obama called Iran to participating in this alliance, anti-ISIL alliance. But to this moment, both countries that they have the main action in the area, Turkey and Syria, Turkey and also Iran. They are not ready
yes,
to
indeed,
participating.
indeed, and they have the benefit of both having powerful armed forces and being Iraq's neighbors, but they are not being strengthened in order to fight this ISIL menace at all. On the contrary, Iran wasn't even invited to Paris for the summit, which has led to these military strikes over the last 48, 72 hours. And Iran has in any case said that the intentions of the United States and its friends are not clean and therefore cannot be trusted. And I would add this, as I did with Ben. In fact, British and American attacks on ISIL will strengthen ISIL, if not specifically as a group, but as an ideology. Even if they were to be bombed into defeat, which seems to me extremely unlikely, if you were going to defeat ISIL, you have to fight them man to man, hand to hand, on the ground, as well as bombing them. But all the countries in this alliance have already ruled out going head-to-head, man-to-man, on the ground with this group. But even if they were defeated militarily, they would merely morph into something else, because they are an ideology, not an army, as much as they are an ideology. And already that's happening. Al-Qaeda was once one. Then it became Al-Qaeda plus ISIL. Now we're told by Obama yesterday there's another group, Khorasan. I never even heard of them before, and I spend many of my waking hours studying what's happening in that region. So undoubtedly, this ideology has to be defeated, and ideologies cannot be defeated by cruise missiles. Let's go to Bani in Switzerland. Bani, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. George Galloway. God bless you and all your colleagues.
Thank you, sir.
I always dream to have you people in Geneva also, because we have this United Nations.
Yes.
Probably can shake all those 240 ambassadors somehow, because
One day, inshallah.
Inshallah, what's going on is like a, universal studio. Al-Qaeda is becoming Al-Qaeda 2, Al-Qaeda number 3. I cannot even pronounce this name of ISI. This ideology, and these are all the fabrication of Hollywood, and please forgive me, Black House in Washington. They want to be in this area. They want to keep reasons to give to those naive people. Why they are there? Because they are Meshal. But all those bad people are created by themselves. They are carrying all the weapons from USA. They have Hammer General Motor Jeeps running around. And we're talking about SWIFT, transferring money from Iran. We cannot do it. How do they do this? And then they sell those oil in Syria to who? To U.S. companies or to Iraqi companies? You were absolutely right. This has to be done from the race, and we have people in Iraq, they should do it. We don't need all those French and U.S. coming and showing all their muscles. Of course, at the same time, they are doing this because at this very moment, I believe there is a Navy exercise between China and Iran in Persian Gulf. So they want to have another reason to be in the area. You see, it's a very hypocrite and contradiction from people like Mr. Tony Blair and all these bands who they come, they put themselves on the TV and they go and show themselves everywhere on the press to say, yes, they are the angels and they want to save the world and these bad people are there. We have to go and help them. Stop giving the money from Saudi Arabia. Stop giving money from Bahrain and all these guys. Finance them because you don't, you know, I beg your pardon because it's really emotional.
No, Bani, you've made your point very powerfully, and I thank you for it. I don't believe myself that ISIL were invented anywhere. I don't believe that they are consciously, at least, an agency of the United States or the Mossad or any of the other conspiracy theories that we hear, although they undoubtedly are serving the interests, wittingly or unwittingly, of both the United States and Israel and the imperial cause in general. I have no doubt at all about that latter point. But the truth is, we built up these people, just as we built up what became Al-Qaeda in the 1980s in Afghanistan. We built this Frankenstein monster, and now it's out of control. We're supposed to be so terrified of it that we return to the scene of former crimes. Well, Bani, a very great man, Professor Einstein, once said that doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the very definition of madness. And I'll be trying to make that point in Parliament tomorrow. Noko is in Cameroon. What's your view, brother, of the anti-ISIL alliance?
Yes, Mr. Josh, my view of the anti-ISIL alliance is a view of interest. The United States and its allies are not going to defeat ISIL. They are going there because ISIL has taken their interest in Iraq because they can no longer export oil.
I agree with that. And I've just seen on the screen that the Iraqi government is claiming that the United States is sending 13,000 soldiers, that's 26,000 boots on the ground, when only yesterday, it seems, Barack Obama was making it clear to everyone who would listen that there wouldn't be any American boots on the ground. So there's 26,000 boots on the ground for a start. But the point I'd make, Noko, is this. These countries that are now planning a return to the war have been fighting wars for the last 15 years nearly, and they've lost them all. They have been totally unable to defeat the bare-footed Taliban in Afghanistan with total war and absolute commitment of hundreds of thousands of foreign soldiers and tens of billions of dollars. They've been unable to defeat the Taliban. What makes anybody think that they are the people to defeat ISIL? In Iraq, they had to leave under fire because the people rejected their occupation, which was hundreds of thousands strong. The Iraqi armed forces that they left behind are the most expensively trained armed forces in the history of the world. But they haven't been able to defeat this ISIL. So it ain't going to be defeated by any number of cruise missiles fired from the deck of a ship off the coast of Turkey. Let's go to London, talk to Shahid. Shahid, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, George.
Wa alaikum salam.
Basically, I just want to say, that I'm 29 years old, and when I was a little boy growing up, I never heard of Al-Qaeda, I never heard of Taliban, I never heard of ISIS and all these groups that are appearing now. So what I think is happening is all these groups are being created because of always the West is trying to invade people's countries and creating loads of problems and creating loads of problems amongst Sunnis and Shias and then they say that they want to help the situation, which is, I don't know whether to laugh or cry, because every time, like you said, every single war that America, Britain has been involved in, with all the weapons that they have, they end up losing the war and they end up losing all the money. So why not use the money that they're spending trillion of dollars on Apache helicopters and tanks and all these weapons they have, and build hospitals and schools and clinics and help children, and and then they're going to win the hearts and minds of the people, and then the people won't hate them so much.
Well, that's brilliant. I couldn't put that better. I just add this. I have a youth club in my constituency, well, just outside my constituency, but in the city of Bradford that I visited last weekend, which is on the point of being closed by the local council to save £18,000. A club, the only one in the district, being closed to save £18,000. One cruise missile, just one, costs $1 million. Majid is in Iran. Quickly, Majid, go ahead. Majid, are you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead, please, quickly, sir.
Good evening, George.
Good evening, sir.
I'm going to talk about, this, of course, they call it coalition. That they are going to defeat the, some people who they themselves created it. In my opinion, the United States of America and his allies in the region, of course, especially the Arab countries, created these groups, these terrorists, and now they're going to have an excuse to come to the region and make another war, in spite of the fact that American people themselves are not supporting, these kind of actions that the United States is doing in the region. And they're not going to have another war because they have suffered a lot from the previous wars that the United States created. And I think that it isn't anything except a kind of, we call it, a plot. It's just a plot that, they're going to have an excuse to be here in the region and do whatever they like and whatever they want.
Of course, Majid, they won't be able to do whatever they like. They weren't able to do whatever they liked when they sent hundreds of thousands of British and American soldiers to occupy Iraq. They're certainly not going to be able to do what they like just because they're bombing it from overhead. They will not send soldiers into Syria because those soldiers would be very, very badly mauled by every side. They will not do so, but they will destroy and kill, and they will willingly or unwillingly, wittingly or unwittingly, thereby strengthen these fanatic forces that they say we're going to war to defeat. I'll be back, God willing, after a very short news bulletin with the second half of the show discussing ISIL and Iraq. Don't go away, please. Come back for the second half of Comment. Welcome back to Comment with me, George Galloway, here on Press TV, still the voice of the voiceless. We're discussing the war which has begun again between Britain and the United States and Iraq. And in the case of the United States and France and a gruesome collection of others, with Syria, the Syrian Arab Republic, which has toiled for 3 years against a coalition of fanatic extremist Takfiris and their backers in the Persian Gulf and in the West, is now faced with having to watch its territory being invaded directly from the air and from the sea by the alliance that Barack Obama calls the coalition of the willing. I call the coalition of the killing. If you were unsure as to whether or not you supported these attack dogs returning to their own vomit, then the sight of Mr. Tony Blair out punting at the weekend, demanding not just more and more and more war in the region in which he's supposed to be the peace envoy, but demanding soldiers to be sent in on the ground in both Iraq and Syria. He's not proposing to put a tin hat on himself, of course, and he wouldn't know which end of a rifle to point at any adversary. Neither are any of his sons likely to be enlisting to go in on the ground in Syria and Iraq. But they want the sons of other mothers and fathers to be sent in. Well, if I was in any doubt, and I wasn't, if I was in any doubt, the sight of a cause being trumpeted by the man who destroyed Iraq with his buddy, George W. Bush, and is responsible. He's jointly and severally responsible for the death of 1 million Iraqis already. The sight of Mr. Blair out batting for war would certainly put me in the opposite column. Let's hear from Jeff in the UK. Jeff, welcome.
Hi, George. Thanks for taking my call.
Welcome, sir.
I'm trying to wonder what lesson is being taught by the US in coalition with Saudi Arabia bombing ISIS. Is the lesson that the US only approves of people who behead and torture and maim their own people if the oil starts flowing the right way?
I think that's a very fair point, Jeff. You'll recall I made much on this program of the man who had himself videoed as he cut open the chest of a slain adversary and cut out his heart and ate it, as well as a part of his lung. That fanatic, savage beast who did that was not a member of ISIL, wasn't even a member of Al-Qaeda. He was a commander, no less, of one of the moderate Islamists in receipt of hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayers' money from Britain and the United States, as well as hundreds of tons of weapons which were promptly stolen from them by Al-Qaeda and now are in the hands of the ISIL. Go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
It's absolutely true. I mean, I think it was a column by Seamus Milne I was reading the other day. Something interested me in that. I think it was Seamus Milne who said, this time last year we became very close to bombing Assad in Syria.
On behalf of groups like ISIL.
Yes, now we're about to bomb ISIL. I mean, so that the pretexts and the causes change, but the only consistent is that Britain and America have a right to be bombing this part of the world. And that's been consistent for many years now. I'd just like to say one thing, not completely related, and that is I happen to agree with, I think Hassan Nasrallah said it best when he said that this ISIL really represents a monstrosity. I completely agree with that. But I would just say that right now there are a lot of people on behalf of Israel, on behalf of people like General Sisi in Egypt, who would use and are using the despicable acts of a group like ISIS to try to delegitimize democratically elected, Islamic-oriented, not fundamentalist, but Islamic-oriented groups like Hamas, like the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And we shouldn't, and I know we wouldn't, but the general public at large should not confuse the two. Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood were democratically elected. We will never support the right of Israel or the right of someone like General Sisi to try to conflate legitimate resistance, people who have won democratic elections, with the barbaric acts of a monstrosity, to quote Nasrallah, like ISIL.
Well said, Jeff. Well said indeed. Paddy is on the line from Ireland. Always worth hearing. Paddy, welcome to the show.
Assalamu alaikum, George. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Nice to hear from you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, brother. I'd like to just comment on the death envoy for the Middle East, Tony, the butcher boy Blair. His carry-on this week about, putting feet on the ground and bombing ISIS and all this. In my opinion, it's like asking the snake that bit you to suck out its own poison by the UK and the USA going back into...
I wish I'd said that, Paddy. I might look out for my speech in Parliament tomorrow.
Oh, please God, yeah. I certainly will, actually. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous because Blair he's hovering over the Middle East like a vampire, begging for prey. Does he not realise, and to the people of the UK and the USA, and certainly I know Europe doesn't realise it, that it's actually us. It's us that are the problem. If we'd have left the Middle East alone to deal with their own problems, they would have dealt with their own problems instead of this mass murdering that's been going on for over a decade now. It's disgusting, and for the idea of the Parliament to be called back to invite more bombings and more murders, I think is absolutely disgraceful. If the support was given to Iran, Syria, Iraq, there'd be no need for anyone to fly around the world to bomb.
You're right. If the weapons that the Iraqi government have already paid for were delivered to them, if Iran, which has a vital interest in many different respects, as a neighbor, as the preeminent Shiite power in the world, has a vital interest in stopping this insanity, this savagery, was brought in from the cold. If the Syrian government were strengthened instead of being weakened by the very people who are bombing Syria in the name of defeating the people who've been trying to destroy Syria and that we have been supporting for 3 long years. You'll recall, Paddy, my trip in the lift with William Hague when he was Foreign Secretary, in which I said to him, it was his misfortune to have got in the lift with me. 5 floors we had to travel. I said, it's not the first time you've been wrong. In fact, you've been wrong all your life. But you've never been insane before. Your policy of arming and funding these so-called rebels in Syria is a policy of insanity, which will not only potentially destroy Syria, will destabilize the entire region, but when they come back home, all dressed up, with nowhere to go, except to bomb us, cut our throats, destroy our country, you and your government will be responsible. Paddy, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you. Shokat is in England, in Manchester. Shokat, welcome.
Hello, assalamu alaikum, George.
Walaikum salam, go ahead.
Right, George, I do believe that this ISIS is a bunch of savages and their ideology is based upon hatred, and I agree with this coalition bombing them. But, George, I need to ask one question, and that question is, there is 5 countries in this coalition. Where were they when Gaza was being bombed out of existence? Thank you.
Well, there's no question about that. Who knew that Saudi Arabia had 700 warplanes? Who knew that Saudi Arabia was ready to fly at the behest of the United States to bomb other Arab countries? If we'd known, we might have asked them if they might intervene to assist their own brothers in Gaza under bombardment, merciless, ceaseless bombardment by the Zionist state. We might have. It might have fallen on deaf ears. But I suppose we imagined that Saudi Arabia was an isolationist power which didn't want to project its military strength in the region. And these others, I don't want to name them, although I could, and you all know who I mean. These others with their uncountable billions, trillions that they throw at football teams, race horses, tennis competitions, golf competitions, building towers in the sky everywhere in the world. Who knew that such people were also ready to fight? Just not for the Palestinians. Ahmad is in Tehran. Ahmad, what's your view on the anti-ISIL alliance? Ahmad?
Hello, Mr. Galloway, and good evening again.
Good evening. Go ahead, sir.
Let me first tell you that we're still waiting for you to just come to my country. But in terms of the topic of the programs tonight, I want to tell you that facing the problem of ISIL can be discussed in several levels. And in the levels of the decisions that the government can take, like always during the past decade, the governments of the European countries or the United States are again insisting to take the wrong steps. And me and you and many other intellectuals of the world apparently cannot do anything to just correct them in their wrong attitude. But what I'm going to tell you tonight, my addressees, I want to be the European people and the people of the United States. So listen to my point. My point is that we have to solve the problem of ISIL rather than fight the problem of ISIL. For solving the problem of ISIL, I want to refer you and your viewers to the speech of my president, Mr. Rouhani, today in his speech in the United Nations. And we have to find the roots of this problem of extremism. And one of the roots is injustice. I want to tell you, Mr. George Galloway, that it is now very clear that from the point of view of the Western people, or maybe the Western governments, the value of the life of an Eastern people or a person who lives in Iraq and has value than the life.
Ahmed, we're losing that line. It was a good call, and you got a good shout. I hope you don't mind me moving on. To Barry in Norway. Barry, what's your view of the anti-ISIL alliance?
Hello, good evening, Mr. Galloway.
Good evening, sir.
Good to have you back. Hope you are having a good health now.
Thank you. Yes, by the grace of God, I'm good. Thanks.
Our prayers goes to you and your colleagues and the entire staff of Press TV. I just have a few comments to give concerning about this ISIL. You know, I've been listening from the beginning of your program, just as you mentioned before. These monsters, before ISIL, these monsters were created by America and their allies themselves. And I think the reason why they created all these things is just so that they can invade countries that they have interest in, where there are oils and, you know, anything they can lay hands on. The world is watching. People understand that what America is, the games they are playing and their allies. Let's not forget about, Libya. Let us not forget about Sudan. Let us not forget about, Afghanistan. Remember, General Wesley Clark mentioned this before, that America is willing to invade 7 countries, and the whole world is aware of this. Okay, now today, when it comes to this so-called democracy they are preaching of, look at the Middle East. How to call it? The kingdoms in the Middle East. Are they good in democracy? Look at how many innocent people are dying today in Syria, in Iraq. This war, with my belief, I think this war is a war of Zionism. They are not fighting because of to protect Syria or Iraq. Okay, after invading Iraq paid them money for them to get their weapons. Iraq can defend themselves. Iran is there as a superpower. Iran never invaded a country. Iran is willing to help. But why is Iran neglected? Let's think of also Africa, with all this AFRICOM. And they have this drone base in Germany. But since the killing machines are always going into Africa, killing innocent people too. They destabilize, Libya, and now they are back into to Syria. They just want to get rid of, President Assad. That's the only thing. And also they said there'll be no ground force. It's only, they'll be only bombing by their planes and all this. But okay, now was it yesterday or today? Or Obama announced that there'll be troops on the ground in Iraq. From day one, when this man came to my country in Norway, and then they won a Nobel Prize. I had a hope. I thought that okay, you know what? All these wars are finished. In this, there'll be no more war. But you see, I want myself, my Nobel Prize, to be returned back to Norway because I don't trust this man anymore.
Well, look, Barry, if they're not going to send in ground forces, then they're not serious about defeating ISIL. If they were serious about defeating ISIL, neither air power nor air power plus boots on the ground with American and British insignia upon them would defeat ISIL. It might defeat ISIL as a known group, but it would immediately morph into something else and would spread everywhere in the world. These bombs, these missiles, are going to kill indiscriminately. The bombardment of Syria by the United States and its friends is absolutely illegal. It's illegal in the United States law. It hasn't even been put to the United States Congress because it is illegal. It's illegal because it hasn't even been put to the Security Council of the United Nations, never mind gaining the assent of the Security Council. So it's illegal, it will be indiscriminate, and it will be absolutely counterproductive. That's what I'll be arguing in Parliament tomorrow. Let's go from Norway to Sweden. Mohammed, welcome to the show. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway.
Welcome,
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. What I'm trying to say here is that, who create this ISIL from the beginning? You know what I believe? I believe UK, United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and US have created this ISIL from the beginning.
Well, they may have done directly or indirectly. Certainly, they have definitely played a part in the creation of this phenomenon. You may recall, I asked David Cameron on the floor of the House of Commons well over a year ago if he could adumbrate for the House the principal differences, just the principal ones, between the Al-Qaeda we were going to Mali to fight and the Al-Qaeda we were giving guns and money in Syria to kill and maim and destroy. He gave a response, but it definitely was not an answer, because there is no answer, because there are no differences, principal differences or otherwise. This phenomenon has fed at the teat of Western power since the 1980s, indeed long before that. I don't want to open old wounds in Palestine and in Egypt, but long before that, Western countries have been supporting fanatic extremism on the principle that their enemy's enemy was their friend. This bankrupt, morally bankrupt view of the world is what has led us to this point. Ogoshua is in Nigeria. Ogoshua, welcome.
Good day, sir.
Go ahead,
Hello.
sir.
Okay,
Yes.
Good day. John Galloway, I'm happy to see you.
And you, sir, go ahead.
Time that we have not been seeing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. What I want to say in this afternoon is that there is nothing like anti-ISIL, rather the anti-Syrian, because this group were being financed by America, Qatar, and the rest of them, and they are used to destroy Syria. None of them ever said another thing until this group went and attacked the minority Christians before they resist over. If this group, if the American and his alliance they are there to protect the interests of the people of the world against any criminality, they would have taken action when Israel is bombardment in Gaza. So what I'm trying to say in essence is that all these things is we are looking at the stupidity of the Arab nation and the Muslim nation. We have all this. Why the strike? I'm not backing the ISIL because they are killing innocent civilians. They are killing human beings. They are chopping heart off here and there. But why America still financing them? Why?
Let me tell you something, brother. I need to press on, but thanks for the call. Saudi Arabia has beheaded live on television one man every single day in the month of August. 31 days, 31 public beheadings, one every single day. Saudi Arabia is the place which has allowed, either by turning a blind eye or otherwise, allowed vast sums of money and weapons to go to these groups. And yet now the same Saudi Arabia is bombing Syria, and we're asked to believe for good intentions. Last call, I think. Mohammed is in Dublin. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother George.
Walaikum salam.
I'm so happy to see you back.
Thank you, sir.
And to see you in good health.
Thank you, sir.
Well, to answer your question, really, I think at the end of the day, when it gets to this coalition and going back to the Middle East, I think it's a bit of like, Sykes-Picot version 2.0. And the unfortunate thing is also the spillover effect that we are witnessing in Algeria. And I am from Algeria, and unfortunately, I was a witness of what happened during the 90s when we lost, 200,000 people. But just to go back to what's going on at the moment, I think obviously there are few variables. Geostrategy is one of them. And it was never about democratization. It was never about, democratization in the MENA region. But what's really bothering me is the point of view of the local political elite. And for them, they rather respect what's going on or what's coming on from the West, rather than respecting what's...
Well, that's right, Mohammed, and that's a big, big part of this problem. The regimes that rule most Muslim countries are a big, big part of this problem. If you've enjoyed it, come back next week, God willing, I'll be here.
Hello, just comment your name and the place you left that number. And just make sure about your television volume set up to 0. So 0. Can you spell your name for me? Yeah, I know. You redirect me, put through your phone number, and then we'll call you back. Comment. And then can I have your telephone number? Okay, so